is a lot like beekeeping. Beekeeping isn't easy, and at times can be downright tough. Sometimes you feel like you're on an island, that you're not making a difference, and that you're on your own. But just remember, the darkest hour is just before dawn. There are those out there shining a light, being the change, and being a lighthouse. You're not alone. There's an incredible community of folks who want to help, who want to lift you up, and want to see you do well. Like the honeybee is to the hive, we're better together. With hard work, if we work together, and with a little help from above, all things are possible. It's not just about keeping bees. It's about being our brother's keeper. Be the lighthouse.
Hey, hey.
Hey, fellas, how's it going?
Howdy.
Good. How about you guys?
Oh, enjoying the snow there. It seems like winter's coming, ready or not, isn't it?
We don't have any of that stuff down here.
Well, hey, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. There's a lot of things I think we'd like to kind of cover and get into, but I think just first and foremost, I want to say winter readiness and spring preparedness is an art in and of itself, and these things vary by location, your goals, your context, the scale that you're working with, and I think that we can probably spend all winter long digging into some of these components of beekeeping. While some of these things vary between backyard scale, sideline scale to commercial scale, I think there are a few tenets that I think that we see that kind of show themselves in each cycle in life that you get into. And when you come into beekeeping from a business standpoint, I think the approach looks maybe a little different than when you treat it like a hobby. And both are awesome. But I think the reminder tonight is to just spend a little bit of time up here mentally to prepare yourself and your bees. Are you coming at it from a hobbyist standpoint, a sideliner standpoint, as a business? And then I think that'll help you kind of sort through all of the, it seems like woes sometime to see if, okay, are these bees ready for winter? And then what do I do to start getting ready for spring? I'll ask that you guys kind of bear along with us tonight. I've got an infected tooth here that seems like it's spreading everywhere, and it's kind of throwing me for a loop here. So I'm going to try to hang on as long as I can here tonight, but I'm probably going to rely on Brian and Bruce to carry the load tonight. So that being said, fellas, you maybe want to start off with a little bit of an update on kind of where you're at with your winter readiness. Bruce, since you have no snow, we'll let you rub it in first.
Well, really, I mean, let me tell you, it's cold here. It's like, what is it? We do have a little cold snap. I'm going to say a cool snap. It's 49 degrees outside right now. So for us, that's, I'm going to say it's chilly. It's pretty chilly. It is definitely, sweater weather or jacket weather, but it's not what you guys are dealing with. But really, it's just kind of like everybody else, just trying to make sure they got good weight on the colonies. I'm going to kind of check that a little bit more this weekend. I'm actually still trying to fight the mites a little bit. I'm just hitting those ones that had some, the pollination bees. I'm hitting them with some oxalic acid with the new INSTANTVAP I got from Rob, which I just a video uploaded today. That thing is an incredible machine. I've heard good things about him, and Greg, you've talked about him, and man, that thing is just a beast. It's awesome. You can plow through those colonies so fast with that thing, and it's a game changer for sure. It's even fun to use that thing. So anyway, but that's kind of where I'm at, and just trying to figure out my strategy over the next few weeks. We will be feeding off and on throughout the winter here. The bees will be flying off and on throughout the winter. They never just go and stay in the hive for days or weeks on end. Usually it's just if it ever gets cold enough to keep them in a cluster, it's no more than a couple, 3 days at the very most. Usually during the daytime, it gets warm enough for some of the bees to be flying around. So it's a little different strategy here, but I'm going to keep feeding them some. Honestly, what I do, and I know you can't do it in certain areas, is I kind of put some open feed out for them, and they get that when it's warm enough, and when it's not warm enough, obviously they can't get it. And the bees have pretty good weight on them. So I'm not feeding them currently, but I am planning on getting some out to them here. I'm just going to check them and just make sure. And I'm going to order some more of those fondant patties, and I'll probably be using those some, especially on the pollination bees, to help them stay built up, because we want them to be built up pretty strong. We try to cause them to do that sooner here than the productive colonies, just because they got to build up before they go to California. So that's kind of my strategy. Just, I'm going to be blasting all of them with oxalic acid probably in December, when it's at its lowest brood, when the bees are at the lowest brood point. But right now I'm hitting those ones that were a little bit high. I'm hitting those right now, all the pollination bees right now, 2 or 3 or even 4 treatments. I'm going to really kind of be pounding them pretty good with the oxalic acid. I got to get the mites down and make sure they're clean before they go to California. That's kind of my goal. So that's what I'm doing. Not too complicated, but we are actively doing stuff. And I'm going to be working also on just trying to get some equipment figured out. I've got ordered some different things. Just kind of doing some of that off-season type stuff, not being in the bees much, but trying to do some other stuff. And we're bottling up honey and just trying to get that stuff sold. So we got things happening. It's just not as much actively in the bees right now.
How many colonies are you going to send out to pollination this year?
My goal is 60. Last year I sent 48, and I've got probably 70 or 75 that, are either on those pallets or I'm looking at to send, but I'm not going to send, I'm going to try and make sure the ones I send are all strong enough. And there are some on those pallets that really just aren't probably going to be strong enough. So that's what I'm trying to weigh out to figure out right now. I want to, cull out the ones that aren't as strong and keep them back. Maybe they'll blow up in the spring, or if not, I can put new queens in them or split them or whatever, and, try to get them built up for next year. But I want to send good, nice colonies out there this year, and hopefully, so we'll get paid for all of them.
This year, so you were up to, what were you up to, 148 at one point?
Somewhere around 150. I don't know, maybe 150-ish, I'm going to say, give or take a few. I never had an exact count, but now I'm probably about 120, 130.
So next year, if you're at 120 or 130, next year you'll be 250, 275.
If I want to be. I don't know that I want to be. So we'll see how we get through winter first. I'm not holding back on the fact that I may want to expand some.
And
A lot of it depends
you'll-
on if I may sell some nukes next year. I'm thinking about doing that for the first time really significantly. And I also, if I have more honey, I've got to figure out how to get rid of it. If I can get rid of it, maybe sell it to some packers, down, not too far away. If they're willing to extract it and harvest it and buy it from me, then I might be willing to do that. But I don't want to have 205-gallon buckets next year of honey to try and sell.
Yeah.
What I've got this year is going to be tough to get rid of it. So
look at Hail Hives. Brian is deflecting.
Like
This
you've heard about chicken math. Brian's got B math where he says it's 10 or 13, but apparently the consensus is 20 to 24, huh?
I think that's about right. Yeah.
That's what they're saying. Yeah. I'm not going to say that that's where I'm going to end up, because it depends on once I really get into the thick of this new contract and I see what my work schedule's like going back and forth from Cleveland. It depends, once I establish that and I get my schedule ironed out, and then I see how much free time I have, that's going to dictate the number that I'm at next year. So I could stay at 11.
Hey, he's leaving the door open. He's leaving the door open to go up some more.
I heard that.
You guys didn't hear anything, but I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes. It just all depends on my spare time. So
that's true.
Yeah, that's all.
What everyone doesn't know is Brian just sent me a text that says, "Can you put me down for 24 Pepto Pink Queens for splits in the spring?" So we'll see how that plays out, Brian.
I broke into his account. I actually sent that from his account. Great.
I wondered why the shipping address said Dothan, Alabama. Huh.
No,
yeah. The card was Brian Coper, shipped to Dothan, Alabama.
That's right. I figured that out.
You see how nice I am,
especially as tech savvy as I am right now, to be able to break into that.
Yes.
Brian, how do you feel about your winter readiness?
I feel I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but I feel like all of the colonies other than one is in a good spot. They all have a lot of weight on them. Even this year, I'm doing something that I have never done, because you go down and you visit Greg Burns and he gives you this little package and says, "Here, take this Pepto Pink Queen." So then I go home and I make a late split, and I have that Apame 7-frame nuke set up, and that's it. I've never overwintered, a nuke. So, and granted, it's 7 frames and it's pretty heavy. I mean, it's stacked. Every frame is just packed out. So, it's got enough food in it. But I've never done that. So, that said, what Greg did is he opened up the door, and he said, "Here you go, Brian. Now you can do this." So numbers, boom. So he's setting me up for expansion. But
absolutely.
Yeah, the one colony I'm worried about, it has about half of the weight that I would like them to have. But I have the fondant, and they have that. If we get warm, I will probably throw feed on them just to get some weight on them. But it is what it is. I mean, if I lose that one and I come out of the winter with 10, you all know what can happen if you have 10 good colonies out of winter.
Yeah.
You're going to make a lot of something, either honey or more bees.
I could be at 11 real quick.
You could be at 20 before you know it.
It just happens. There's something, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever talked about this or not. But as you were talking about the Pepto Queen that we got for you, it reminded me of a conversation that I had with Bob one day. Bob and I were driving late one night, cruising from commercial yard to commercial yard, and I can remember it was just he was asking about strategy. What do I do up north as far as overwintering? And when I told him that we can get by overwintering nukes and some small stuff that a lot of people just scoff at and say it can't be done, his eyes kind of perked up, and he said, "You're making late season queens, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep." And he goes, "That's the ticket. Those late season queens do really good in the wintertime." So that's something I've always kind of kept in the back of my mind where, this year we were trying to make a lot of late splits, even into the first part of October, because we just had the queens in boxes and we had the numbers to do it. It got so crazy, didn't get a chance to do that. But the reason that kind of triggered that memory, Brian, is it's always interesting to try to, as you ready your yard for winter or your yards, you think you have done the best that you can. You've kind of put all these things in place, and then you come out of the spring, and there seems to be like wild cards. The ones that you think are going to make it are the ones that don't. The ones that you write off are the ones that make it through. And so, what I wanted to throw a thought out there for a lot of folks is, a lot of us are. It's okay if you get to that burnout phase where you're just like, hey, I am done. There is just not enough meat on the bone here to keep digging in. A lot of us the season's done and over with. It's just little tiny things from here for the rest of the year. It can be easy to get discouraged and want to walk away, take a little break, but there's something about when you are engaging with the bees and you're trying to figure this whole thing out. Come springtime, there's a couple things that you can do now to prepare that I think is absolutely just huge. It's easier said than done, but right now, while the season is still fresh, you have a certain perception of how that season went. You have a certain perception of the stellar boxes of bees. You have a certain perception of these things went right. I need to work on these kind of things. As the rest of the winter unfolds, and you get into the spring, some of those details, it's really easy to just totally forget and glass over. So what I would encourage you to do is just take a little bit of time, get yourself right mentally, and just sit down and focus on your season, and just be okay with it just being oddball notes. Nothing's organized, just a map of all the things that you want to say, and then put that away. And then in the springtime, when you are really starting to really dig in and get back to it, just review those. But before you review it, at that point in the season, write down how you think the season went, and then compare the two, because it's really easy sometimes to just not take the time right now, and then we come into the spring, and we have so many biases as far as education and what we think, hey, these certain ones did so great, or these certain this or certain that. In fact, if we look back at the notes that when they were fresher, that were more fact-based, sometimes you might find that the two things don't really align, and that can help you to start to better understand what it is that you're looking for. Where this matters is once you start to get years of beekeeping under your belt and you start developing good observational qualities, that you can look back at a season at certain points of the year and get different takeaways from it. Right now, you might be absolutely just, your mind might be completely ate up with, what was my mite loads? What treatment did I use? Were they too soon? Are the boxes heavy enough? All these things. But then when you come out of the spring, depending on how the winter goes in spring, you might have completely different other focus and concerns that you don't have right now. So just keep that in mind as you start to go from winter readiness to spring preparedness there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks here in the comments. I don't know that we can get to y'all, but I just want to shout out DC's Bees, Tim Huffman. We got Roy Adams from Adams Outdoors, Dwayne Von Bargen, Rodney Middleton, Matt and Sarah, John Lawler, Russell Koopman. Bruce, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that contribution there.
I know we talked last week, I think maybe before you got in the chat, Greg, that, with the big stuff that's coming up with the anniversary chat we're going to do on December 21st and everything, we're trying to get some really good prizes and everything. And these super chats, super stickers, anything you can do to help the channels out or help us out really goes a long ways. And I try to turn mine all back either into the channel or into, prizes. Most of it just goes right back into what we're trying to do here. So just really appreciate it, everybody. And just keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a friendly reminder.
Before we keep, thanks. Yeah, we got it. I'm really looking forward to. It's been almost a whole year,
Sure
year
has.
of the stream team, and the amount of people that we've been able to reach that have come into our life, that we've influenced, that have influenced us, is just tremendous. When you really think about the global network of folks, and I think a lot of folks that are tuning in to our stream team beekeeping chats, they, I think, are also of a certain mindset, and their heart is in a certain direction to be the lighthouse for folks, to kind of help them out when they can. I don't know, Brian, if you can post that link that we had talked about just a little while ago. Many of you know Justin Ruger from Accessible Beekeeping, the author of Henry Meets the Honeybee. He's had a challenging and difficult life, and it's a lot to kind of work out. I just want to ask your folks just to just spend a little bit of time thinking about Justin, shoot him some prayers, some thoughts. He's on some hard times right now. And if you feel inclined to check out his GoFundMe and see if that's a fit for you to support and contribute, if that gets put on your heart, then Brian has that link right here. We'll also throw it into the description and see what we can do to help Justin out there. Is there a certain method, guys, or a certain thing that you feel like you've done this year that you've done differently, that you feel like is going to create a higher percentage of overwintering than maybe in years past?
Let me go first.
Rock, paper, scissors. Go ahead. Rock, paper, scissors.
Go ahead. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've done differently this year is I've just tried to be more intentional about treating for mites and staying on top of what's going on in the colonies and trying to just keep them at a healthy size. Just not. I've tried to be more intentional about everything I've done. And working full time, as many folks on here understand, it's difficult to sometimes stay ahead of everything. And but I think I've done a little better job. I've never done a lot of testing for mites in the past. Had 3 goals going into the year. They go right in line with what Cayman talks about with the Hive Life movement, basically, that he's created. Number 1, great queens, dead mites, and proper nutrition. I think I've done a lot better. My answer to the great queens is, of course, getting some of the Pipto Pink queens from Greg. Also trying some queens from Jose and from a more local guy, Josh Ray, some mated queens. But also, I think part of having vibrant queens is having younger queens. Overall average age is a little bit younger. And so that's one thing I did. I did a lot of splits early, had a lot of new queens in these colonies that are from this year. I'm sure there are still some older ones. I think some of the colonies I had kind of requeened themselves. And overall, I didn't have near as much loss this year coming out of summer, which is my most difficult time. And so really those 3 things, I've tried to control the mites better. I've actually monitored them better. I've done mite washes. I've tried different kinds of treatments, more consistent treatments when it was appropriate to do them. And still trying to get them a little bit, make sure they're under pretty good control. And so, it's been good. I hope it's going to work out for me in the spring. I've never treated like this or really paid attention. I've treated here and there kind of randomly, but I've never really paid attention. Queens, I think overall younger age on the average is going to be good. Plus, I think I've got some good genetics. And then, of course, the feeding, that's something I really haven't honed in on or focused in on as much as I probably should. And that's kind of the area I need to really work on. And so I'm going to keep working on that. I'm kind of doing what I've always done with the feeding and just kind of staying on top of it, doing the open feeding and stuff. I need to get more into the intentional type of feeding of the bees. But the truth is down here, we've got stuff coming in most of the year and they can build up really good and they can have good stores from the tallow flow if you don't take it all from them. And so as long as you monitor that weight, kind of like Mike Berry does, he kind of lets them get heavy and then he just monitors them. And if they need to be fed, he feeds them, but he doesn't just feed, just to feed. And so I'm still trying to get that part of the equation figured out a little bit. The problem is for my production hives, I don't want them to be just, because down here it stays warm enough that they'll just start brooding up like crazy. I mean, in the wintertime when you don't really want them to, if you in your production colonies, you want them to kind of be a little bit lower during the wintertime. So if you feed them when they don't really need it, they start brooding up. And then you have so many bees in January, February when they're not, and the honey flows don't really start here significantly until April, March or April. You've got some stuff coming in, but no big honey flows. And so, they're going to be peaking a month or two early if you're not careful. So how do you manage that? You can split them or you can do whatever, but if you just let them kind of ride along on your production colonies, if you're not interested in splitting and growing too much, you can do that. But the pollination bees are a different story because they have to be booming at the end of January. So on those bees, I'm going to probably be feeding them more and trying to ramp them up starting, I'm going to keep them hopefully good weight on them right now, but probably, mid-December. So I'll probably start feeding them fairly consistently, just giving them like even open feeding or whatever I can do to kind of get them to build up and get some brood in there. So when they hop on that semi truck to go out to California, by the time they get there, hopefully they'll be booming and ready to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered the question, but I've just been more intentional about it. What I've been trying to do is the bottom line. I'm not real good at keeping records. Mike Berry writes everything down and I just kind of year after year, I kind of remember things and I kind of learn. And over time, I probably could have gotten it in line quicker, but I just I get a feel for what I need to do and almost like an instinct that I've developed a little bit over the years. And even still, sometimes I'll make the wrong decision.
I think you said it right there. You've been more intentional. I think the power of that in itself, of just being mindful that I'm going out to go do this thing needs to be done. That process of thinking, rather than just sometimes I can only speak for me, but it seemed like for the first couple years, everything's felt so willy-nilly. I need to do this. Someone said to do that. I'm supposed to have this kind of a thing. And this is always, and there's just no way to untangle it. It's hard to be intentional when you don't have any enough experience to say, hey, this is what's actually working. But being intentional, I think, is a great way of kind of simmering that down. I want to thank Brian Coper, Bruce Brown, and Tim McCandless. Thank you for the super chats there. Just can't say enough. I really appreciate you guys a lot. So thanks for doing that.
Hey, Greg, one thing I wanted to mention before you move on, had an interesting situation just a couple days ago. I've started posting these little, if you go to my channel, you'll see them, the Stream Team nuggets. And one of them I did was on the Stream Team live we did with Ian. I've only done a couple of them so far. It was about feeding bees. And in that particular segment, we talked a lot about reading the frames, reading the bees, and you just kind of hit it on the head. And I did too a little bit, I think, where we talk about, intentional beekeeping, knowing how to read the bees. And that is something that you gain with experience. Well, someone commented and they said, I keep hearing people say, read the bees, read the frames. I'm a new beekeeper. Somebody please do it, explain what that even means, because, Ian talked about it. We talked about it. We acted, and we do, we have an instinct. We kind of know what a good frame looks like and what it means. But I think sometimes, I know, at least in my case, I might forget that a lot of people watching may not even have bees yet, or they might be brand new beekeepers and not really know what they're looking at. So one of my goals, and maybe we can talk about a little bit more as we go along on the live streams, is really kind of explain what we're seeing sometimes on some of these frames and kind of break it down for folks so they kind of really know. I mean, I'll pull out a frame and say, here's some brood, here's some eggs, here's whatever. But I've never really kind of said, okay, this frame looks like this is what this means, and interpreted what that means. And so I think it would be good for, YouTubers on here and everyone to kind of maybe look, that might be an idea for you going forward, to put something together about kind of what your interpretation of those frames is, besides just what you're seeing sometimes. And I think that would help some folks out here.
I think being intentional on the fact that you are opening up a book and just to take a read of what's going on. I can only speak for myself, but a lot of that information, there's so much that is sensory that there's no way in the world that I'm going to look at Bruce or Brian or anybody else when they pull a frame of bees out and say, oh, okay, well, that is that means the hive has a da 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 da. Sometimes there's so many nuances that when you crack a lid, their sound, their smell, there's a vibe, there's an essence, how they're covering the frames. You pull the frames up, how they're moving, how they're not moving, where they're running to, where they're running from. There's so
That's
many
true.
little things that you pick up on. And I
Mhm.
think that, but so I don't know that you can watch a video and learn that, but what I think you can do is be mindful. I like the word that Bruce is using tonight, intentional. If you set the intention on, okay, what am I seeing with the, if you're just mindful that you're looking at something that you're trying to read and understand, the more repetitions that you get of that, the more feedback that you get will support one way or the other. And that's actually a really, that's a great spring preparedness tip is start to think about the things that we do. And then eventually they just become second nature.
Mhm.
It's so too, it's like when you're like folks want to grow so fast. They want to start off with, and not everybody, some people don't, but a lot of people want to they start off with a couple of hives and they get the quote unquote bug, they're dealing
Mhm.
with bugs here, the bugs in the box. And they say, I want to have 50, I want to have 100, I want to become a commercial beekeeper, but they don't take the time to manage the ones they have. And I kind of am guilty of that. I expanded so fast that I'm still feel like I'm playing catch up sometimes. And so I think honestly, looking at the three of us and Greg, I'm not 100% sure of your story, but I think Brian is handling this the right way in a lot of ways. In that, he's like, I wanted 10 colonies. I've worked up to 10. I've kept them healthy. I'm getting a handle on how to do that and keep them strong. And then once he gets a handle of that, it becomes easier for me. He understands what he's looking at and seeing. If he decides to go up to 20 or 15 or whatever, it will be better for him. It'll be more likely to keep him alive as opposed to expanding so fast and then getting, kind of Ian talks about that a little bit about how if you just expand too fast, you're going to have as many bees as you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get too big too fast, you're going to lose a bunch and you'll be right back to the amount of bees you're able to manage. And that happened to me last year. Honestly, that happened to me last year. I had such a huge loss. It was just very heartbreaking for me, but I just wasn't ready to have as many as I had. And so I think it's real important just to learn to manage what you have. Yes, if you have a goal to become a commercial beekeeper, that's great, but learn how to deal with the ones you have. Take your time, like you say, Greg, to watch the bees, to take some time and learn the smells, everything that's in there. And the bees will teach you a lot. Certainly there are certain things, certain brood patterns and things you need to look for that you can learn on a video, but the actual instincts that you develop, you have to just get in the bees to develop those skills, honestly.
There's definitely a whole art to not only reading anything, but how we take the information in, how we process it, and then what we do with it. That is in its own art form, in and of itself. There for sure. Brian, is there anything that you've put into practice this year that maybe you've done a little bit differently that you feel like is going to give you a little bit greater over winter percentage?
Practically my whole entire season. And I say that because I started last year, I think it was February or so, with the Hive Live fondant. And I continued through my season. I had never used patties. So then I used the global patties with the Hive Live in it. I
Mm-hmm.
used the supplement, in my syrup. So I went down the road of nutrition, and that was just after listening to, videos, speeches from Humberto, Ian, those that, have been successful on that proper nutrition. Looked at, my mite control regiment. And I think I have that a little bit more dialed in. So, all of that said, everything that I did this year, I said, in October, I never before in any of my prior years, I never saw populations where they were at. Now, that could come back to bite me in the rear because they could be so big that they, absolutely just demolish their stores that they have. But I'm still carrying through with, I have fondant on all the colonies now. So I'm just continuing with the supplements to keep those colonies nourished. You know, I think this year, looking at the whole entire year, and this is not so. This is a disclaimer here. Everybody, I see the Brian 20, Brian 24, Brian 30, Brian 50, whatever. This is a disclaimer. At this time of the year, so we're November 16th, I have never prior in any of my years in beekeeping had my colonies where they're at right now, strength wise. I've never had all my equipment clean, never had everything organized like I do right now. So when people say, "Oh, well, look at that. You have extra time. You can do this and that and whatever," we will see. We'll see what happens. But this year, if I do say it, some later date, I want to look back and say, "Hey, how was my 2022 season?" Overall, I had a couple little hiccups. I had one colony that went to a laying worker. That was my own fault though. I just didn't manage it like I should have. And Greg, you're muted. There's that little icon down there? It says you're muted.
Okay, so that's not the cops coming to my house. Is the cops coming to your house, Brian?
Oh, no. Well, this is Cleveland, so who knows where they're coming around here.
Say no more.
But I had that little hiccup and a couple little hiccups throughout the season, but I was able to dial in, like what Bruce is saying and those out there. I was able to dial in a lot of my practices and somewhat get a schedule, according to I'm at this point in the year. What am I looking at? What do I need to be doing? What should the bees be doing? More getting into reading your colonies. Brian, lock the door. I should flip that little metal thing that goes over the door.
Roll them up, lock them up.
You're right. But I think part of too, like, you were talking about, hey, getting 50 colonies real quick and doing all this and that could lead to that beekeeping burnout. And it's, I think for some people, that's like a bragging thing. Oh, I've been beekeeping for 2 years. I have 50 colonies. And then there's the curve. And, once you hit that 3-year point and people are losing colonies and they're losing money, they just quit. So for me, it has been just hone in on my skills, just, and I've said it before, I just want to be able to keep the bees, not lose the bees, and in time, if I hone in on all of my beekeeping skills, it'll be, just think of how much easier it will be, in a couple years if I say, okay, well, I still have whatever 15 colonies. I have time at home. Let's go up to 30 this year. It'd be it'd be work, granted, but it'd be easier just because I would have honed in all of those skills, know when I should be seeing certain things in the colonies, know when I need to feed, know when I need to treat. So yeah, but this year I'm so happy with this year so far. So, and we'll see. I mean, come March, and March is a critical month in Ohio, Greg, but come March, ending of March, getting into April, if I have a decent number of colonies that come out of this winter, man,
You're going to be busy.
I probably will,
Well,
I will.
for us, one of the metrics that we use is the maple bloom. Once we're in maple bloom, whatever is on in a box, historically, makes it through. And so that's going to be when that happens. What happens before that? I am, boy, I hate to even say something like this because it's not very positive. But it is a fact. The woolly caterpillar has been spot on for at least the last 6 years that I've been paying attention. And if you thought last year was bad, what I'm reading from the woolly caterpillar is this year is going to be exponentially worse
Horrendous.
than last year. And I know a lot of folks are just, you hillbillies and your superstition, to a certain extent. But I will say this. I just got back from a trip out to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, visiting Premier's new plant and spending time with the guys at Premier hunting pheasant and talking with Jeff Johnson. You know, we sat down, we did an interview, which that'll come out really soon. But one of these thoughts that I just absolutely cannot shake is when you spend time outdoors with another outdoorsman who appreciates just the grand cycle of all things. It doesn't take you really long to pick up on the fact that once the way is understood, it is seen in all things. So once you are looking in nature and you can see that divine ordination of all things, you see it in everything. Whether it's in the gun dog working the bird, whether it's the duck going to roost, whether it's our bees in the box with a woolly caterpillar showing up. For us, I wait until the messenger meets me in a place where it is just a complete correlation. When the woolly caterpillar shows up in a bee box, on a bee box, or on beekeeping equipment, I take notice. And the woolly caterpillar showed up in all three of those places this year and was all marked identical. You'll hear some folks will say, mine are all brown or mine are all black. There's something, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but there's something about the number 3, and there's something about when these things show up the way that they do. I feel like it's a message. And for me, that's how I project and plan, and I look forward for the spring and what's going to happen. And every year, it's been right on the money each time. What I'm seeing with the woolly caterpillar is that we're going to have a week or two starting off cold and a little miserable. And when we look around, Brian, all of a sudden it's snowing everywhere we go, and it's down in the teens, just like that, out of nowhere. We went from 60s and 70s to snow in 19.
Boom.
And so here we are. We're at the head of the woolly caterpillar, and so I'm going to start watching every week as it kind of goes. What that means for us is that we have to start to prepare ourselves on how the season went, how it actually went, how we think it went, and then start to make plans in the spring based on that. And that is a big challenge to try to look that far in the future, to look until maple bloom, to start to make plans for the beekeeping season. We were talking about what were some of the things that you guys did this year that you feel like is going to set you up for a higher success rate or higher overwintering. I'll just quickly share a couple of those things. For me, but the word that Bruce threw out there earlier, intention, I think nails it. I was way more intentional about all of the not only big picture things, but the finer, the tighter lens kind of things. And to do that, you really have to spend time knowing yourself, knowing your habits, and knowing those decisions that you tend to make. For most year, we usually, I'm pushing my bees too hard, too long, and then by the time I get to the end of the season, there's not much left. You know, having a hard time saying no. If somebody wants a nuke or they want a queen, I always will just dig into even my own personal stock to do that. And then for all these years, it's always hurt me. But one thing that I did differently this year was that I made sure that I made a lot more bees than I needed. And then at a certain point, my wife reminds me to cut it off. That's it. No more nukes, no more queens, start rebuilding. And that takes all this weight off your shoulders to keep producing for others so you can produce for yourself. So the next year you can get right back into it and produce for more folks. I think we all can get into a habit where if you start selling nukes or you start selling queens, or even honey, I mean, honey's really no different. If you get in there and you hit them too hard and you're robbing too late and they're not getting anything else backfilled, that could negatively impact those success rates of those bees. kind of moving on. So what we've done is we set boundaries, we set limits and say, okay, at this number, every split we make, everything we do is going right back into the burn stock, and then that's it. And that has been tremendous, because what I'm seeing this year, a combination of really being intentional about doing that this year, having such an abundance of pollen and nectar coming in, but also spending a lot more time tuning into the bee nutrition, I think has really been huge. Staying on top of feed, making sure everything has feed at all times that are in a bee growing situation, even with heavy flows, it just yielded more bees, and it just yielded healthier looking bees. I've never seen our bees this healthy. And where that gets exciting is when we go from winter readiness, we're here at the ready. We are just waiting for whatever happens. And then if we need to make a change or make a tweak, we can. And then once we get through all of that, then we're really are doing that correctly, is preparing us for the springtime for things to kind of explode. But the combination this year of PROSWEET all the time was huge. Just the bees were fat and they were healthy, and they just grew, and we were drawing out wax all year long, even during a dearth, which is a big deal if you're trying to raise more bees. And then at the end of the year, incorporating the Hive Alive within the PROSWEET, I'm really feeling like that is going to do wonders for the health of those bees coming through and then coming out of the spring. And one of the things that we're doing just completely different this year is when we talk about supplements, we talk about nutrition, we talk about, well, what are the things that we can do to give the bees nutritionally an advantage. We've used dry sugar for years and years and years and years, and it has a certain result. But this year we are completely doing an about face with that. And I'm not putting dry sugar on any of the colonies at all. We've invested in the Hive Alive fondant so we can continue to get those benefits like the thymol and the seaweed and the things that we were talking about last week with Mike Berry. If you want to dig in deep, so why we think Hive Alive is a big deal and why you should consider using it, check back on whose channel was that last week, fellas? Was that
It was mine. It
Bruce's?
was mine, yeah.
Check back to Bruce's channel on last week's live chat, and you can kind of dig into more of that. Those are all those little things that, as small as they seem, yes, it's a financial investment. Yes, we have to put those things on. But if dry sugar yielded, let's say, a 15% rate of growth because we did those things, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Hive Life fondant will actually do, especially because the bees can actually get right to it and they can use it right away. So I think that's a big deal. Getting ready for the spring and we also have to remind ourselves, it goes, and I'm reminded of the conversation that I had with me and the trees and the bees, where I'm sitting there and I'm worrying about, man, you didn't do all those things right. Here we are in October. This has been years ago. What do I need to do for these bees? And I was reminded there's nothing that you can do now to make up for what you didn't do then. And that makes a lot of sense. Adams Outdoors, thanks. We had Drop Tine Buck and Adams Outdoors. They stopped by the shop, and they bought some Hive Alive to take down to the Fairfield County Beekeepers Club to get those folks in touch with that. So I really appreciate that. I get real quickly for the folks who have been ordering the Hive Alive cases from our website at nature'simagefarm.com. I really appreciate that. That means a lot for you to take the time to support us to do that. Susie's been busy getting all those things shipped out. If you're on the website, we were talking about queens a little bit earlier. If you are thinking about incorporating some genetic diversity that leans heavy on Caucasian and Carney mixed with just our long-standing Ohio survivor stock, we are sold out for May. It's already sold out. We're now into June. And I'm going to expect as the months continue, we will probably be sold out sooner than later. If you're thinking about incorporating some of our genetics into your apiary, we would love to do that. But don't wait too long, and make sure you get the dates that you actually want. nature'simagefarm.com.
What I just heard, Greg, is that I procrastinated and I have to make my splits later next year than what I was planning.
Well, once you figure out what actually works for you and the bees that you're working with, then you start to dial in these things that, hey, if I were to go, to a local bee club and say, oh yeah, cool, I make splits clear up into October, they look at you like, what are you talking about? That is the worst piece of information that you could give anybody who's starting off in beekeeping. But what's that little thing there, Brian, that we say context is what?
Key.
Context is key. When you've got a 5-frame box that has a queen and a colony, and you've got another box over here that is bigger than what you need to go into the wintertime, it's as simple as this, and then adding a queen. And there's already so many different ways to do that. So just that, to just circle back on that, those were the big things too. Intentional about feeding, also being intentional on really just walloping the mites as hard as possible. And I know that we've talked about this little trick that we play on ourselves in Ohio, where we go from spring and summer flow, and then we flirt around with, are we going to get a fall flow? And then if no, okay, let's go ahead and treat earlier in the year. And then if we are going to get a flow, let's hold off on the treatments until a little bit later. And then we roll the dice to see, okay, what are our mite loads going to be? One thing that we were just adamant about this year was just staying on top of the washes. And I got a little bit of a teaser. Just when you think the Dawn dish soap saga couldn't possibly get more dramatic, I've got some film to edit, or film. Jeez, I'm not that old, right, Bruce? Golly.
It works. We all know what you mean.
I've got some footage to edit that is going to absolutely take this to another level, to where what? And so stay tuned for that.
Wow.
I'll
be curious. You've added on the fondant, the Hive Life fondant.
Yeah.
I saw a noticeable difference in my colonies this year.
Yeah.
I'll be curious with you. And if your colonies come out of the winter and go into the spring, they have that gut health. They're healthy bees. They're, virus loads, everything is good. I will be curious to see what direction you go next year. And by saying what direction, I mean, the number of colonies, because you'll have those resources there and they'll be readily available. And the wheels in Greg Burns' head they're going to start turning.
You're exactly right. And where I'm really looking forward to, Son of One, I want to thank you for the super sticker there. I really appreciate that, buddy.
That's it. That's it down here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What I really appreciate about the fondant is when you are raising nukes and queens, you have some tools to your disposal that you didn't really have before. When you are running singles, 5-frame singles, whether it's mediums or deeps, or even if they're 5/5s, the dry sugar only gets them so far. And if I'm honest with myself, over all these years, I think the dry sugar net gain is more as a desiccant than it is a carbohydrate. If I'm really honest with myself, the difference with the Hive Life fondant is it is an inverted sugar ready to go. They're ready to rock and roll right on top of it. Where that's huge is when you are overwintering singles, or you're overwintering mating nukes. That's a big deal, because it's absolutely not. Even if you just extrapolate the price, and I'm only going to use the price that we have, because everyone's going to be a little different. When you buy it individually, they're $6 a piece. From us, when you buy them by the case, it's $5.33 for a whole box of 15. They're $5.33 each. If each colony maybe uses 2 or maybe 3 at the very most, you're somewhere in the $15 to $16 mark if you're running nukes, to throw that on top of there. And if in my mind, if I'm continually throwing fondant on a colony because they're using it, that means that the colony is alive, right? And so the more I can continue to put on them and the longer they keep using it, to me, if that's what it takes to get that colony through through that really difficult part of late winter, early spring, now I've got a colony that's going to need at least split at least once at the very minimum, right? But I'm also using, what I'm really interested in is the drones that come out of that colony for drone saturation. If I'm splitting that twice, that's $400. So by investing smartly in something they're going to use, and to potentially turn that $15 into $400, if that's what it takes to get them to cruise through and make it, that's a big deal. And the difference is when we start to think about beekeeping as a business, and we start to think about, okay, what is the return on my investment financially and in time, we start to figure these things out, and then these things start to make sense, and then you do it, you see a result, and you keep repeating, and now you really start to create a lot of leverage for what you're actually doing with your bees in the bee yard. There's a negative connotation that comes along with, let me say it this way instead. To get our bees through the wintertime, or to grow our apiaries, I'm going to say it one way once, and then I'm going to say it a different way twice. But if we are wanting to grow our bees, the reason that we're spending all this aggravation and time getting the bees to winter is so that we have a unit to multiply in the spring in its simplest form. What is the right tool to do that? Well, it could be a bunch of different things, right? But the second we say, what is the right amount of money to get that unit through the spring? Now, all of a sudden, if you're listening, you heard right tool and you're thinking, okay, cool. But when you say the right amount of money, all of a sudden you're like, oh, no, that money is just the tool that gets you where those units need to be in the spring. Are there things that you can do throughout the year that gets that unit where it wants to go? Sure. But sometimes you end up with excess bees, excess nukes at smaller colonies. If you can put a little invest financially into those bees, they pay dividends that you don't fully understand until you're looking at those bees in the spring that need split once or twice. So I want to challenge folks to start thinking about your beekeeping like a business, if that is your goals. If it's not, then it's totally cool too. And I think maybe we'll dig in deeper throughout the winter on some of these financial, mental approaches with beekeeping, that once you can get past the way that your old thinking on things, it really helps literally free your mind on what you can do with the assets that you do have and the bees that you have to keep growing and growing and growing. I want to thank Fuzzy World. That's huge. That's probably the biggest super chat I think we've ever seen. And so I want to thank you for giving that to us. I really do appreciate that. We've got some folks tuning in. We've got Bob Walker. I see Lee from Kodiak, Alhambra, James Noel, old Ian Stepler. He says he's got snow, wind, and cold in Miami tonight.
Ian he's a friendly guy. He's been on these streams. He's such a friendly guy. And I know he was sitting there. At some point he thought, I have to share with these Southern beekeepers. So he sent
to him, we're all Southern.
Right, we're all Southern. He sent that Arctic blast that I've been hearing about on the news, and they're talking about, and he's going to laugh when I say the amount, but they're saying 6 to 9 inches overnight. He's probably like, that's a dusting up here.
That's it. But I don't even need to get the snow shovel out for that. We walk through it. Yeah, exactly.
I don't even break the Kraken out for 6 to 9 inches.
No, that's awesome. I got Tim Huffman in here, Jimmy Warner, Keith Spillman, Carl H. Old Dr. J's Bees is in the house. That's cool too. And that bee man at Faith Apiaries, Jimmy Warner. Appreciate you guys. Really do. You guys taking time out of your evening to kind of hang with us and talk about bees. I know sometimes we can kind of, when I say we, I mean me specifically, get on tears on trains of thought. But one thing I'm really passionate about is trying to help folks just, I mean, maybe see the circumstance in a different light, because sometimes the tools that you need, the approach is right there, but we are just we're caught chasing our tail sometimes until someone throws just a little, as Bruce would say, a little nugget out there that clicks and locks in, and that can take you somewhere different. Fellas, as you are starting to prepare for the spring, depending on your context and your goals and the scale you're operating in, folks are going to get absolutely tired of us saying it, and I hope that they do, because then we've said it enough to where it makes sense. Depending on all those three things, some folks never stop digging in with beekeeping. It is nonstop. It's on to the next and the next, even throughout the wintertime. You're securing woodenware, you're securing feed, you're all these things that we have to do. Some folks that I'm jealous of the bees are put away. They can check them out. They can look in on them, throughout the wintertime. And so they might go about it just a little bit differently too. And that's cool. What are you guys doing? Brian, let's start with you. What are you doing at your scale, within your context, with your goals to start to get ready for the spring of 23?
I'm going to dance a fine line is what I'm going to do over the next, probably 2 months, 3 months, really. And like I said earlier, once I iron out what this new work schedule is and I see the amount of time that I have, that's when I'll sit back and I'll say, okay, I ended the season on a good note. I was able to manage like Ian, my wife said can't have eggnog before December. No cracking. That's funny. Sandy's laying the law down on Ian. But what I'll do is, according to my schedule, that's going to dictate how far I expand, if I can expand. If I need to build new stands, I'm going to do that. That'll probably be my February, March, because we can't do anything before that. In Northeast Ohio, it's too early. I wish that, I was in Alabama, because you'd be making your stands and you'd be prepping equipment in December for next year, but, we don't have that luxury up here. But really, that's what's going to dictate. I'm going to look at my schedule. If I have extra time and I can say, okay, let's add 5 colonies to the mix, and then I go up to a level of 15 or 16 right in there, what I want to do is I've spoken about it and I've mentioned just to people, I'll probably end up with more colonies than what I want. So I haven't quite, and there's only the 3 of us on here listening. No one else is here. So I haven't mentioned to my wife that I'm going to get myself in trouble. I want to build a nuke stand at my place so that when I do splits, what I want to do, and everybody's going to say, oh, see, Brian this number, Brian that number. But what I want to do is, let's say I feasibly can manage 15 colonies, okay? Let's say I go from 11 to 15, and that'll be my number for next year. I want to exit the season next year with 15. Any other colony that I have extra, I want to take out to my physical place and set up a nuke stand where I can get those colonies established, get the queens mated and sell them. Or even if there's a new beekeeper, just say, you know what, come over, take it. But that's going to be my February and March. And I want to make sure that I have everything set up so that come April, and April is like that roller coaster of a month also for us, I'm ready. And if I need to take a trip down to Nature's Image and say, okay, Greg, I need, you know, this, and this for equipment. I have it ready. I have my stands ready. Everything is set, and it's just a smooth sail into the spring. But we'll see. It's just I have to wait a couple weeks just to see what. Matt, I'm gonna kill you. But I just have to wait a couple weeks just to see in what direction I can go. Hopefully, I can. I mean, would I love to expand out? Yes, I would. But then I got to take a step back also and think, will I still be able to have those moments like I do now? Do I want to sacrifice some of that? Because I have I have that pie, and each of the 11 colonies takes a certain amount of time. So do I want to, cut the pie into 15 pieces versus 11? So we'll see. We'll see.
That's great. You're operating right within the goals that you're setting, and okay, as far as the woodenware, here's how to get there. It's a lot better to figure that out now than to be in late April trying to make splits and the equipment that you don't have on hand. That's a big deal. Bruce, what are you doing? Where are you at right now with starting to for your spring preparedness? What are you doing right now? You think that's going to really help you be successful in the spring?
Well, right now, I actually have just ordered some more pallets and some more lids and some things like that. I have a lot of kind of woodenware and things that I've come across, gotten some good deals on, so I'm okay with most of that. I'm probably gonna have to order some more frames, possibly. I might get some Jester nuke boxes and start trying to split into some of those. I've never used those before, but my friend down here, Tyler, he's actually he works full time, but he's a commercial beekeeper. He's got like over 1,000 colonies, so I don't know how he does it, but he does. But he sells a lot of nukes, and he loves those Jester nuke boxes, those easy nukes, that I'm talking about. So the kind of the political sign material stuff that he uses, he loves those, and so I may try to use some of those, and maybe try to sell a few nukes. And so right now, just kind of working on equipment, making sure I get my equipment ready, making sure I keep the bees alive. Really, just continuing to maybe use some of the oxalic acid on some of these bees and keep them hopefully kind of clean, and just get ready to ramp it up. I think I've got most of what I need supply wise. I am going to probably order some Hive Alive fondant and try that again. Be once again more intentional about that. Instead of last time I used it to keep my bees from dying, because they would have. This year maybe I can keep from ever getting to that point. They're just really down here. It's very difficult to hold your bees back because they just something happens in January. Maybe it's the solstice, I don't know, but they just start to grow. And you can't slow them down. Now I'm eager to see how yours do, Greg, those Pepto Pink wings, because I imagine they'll stay a little bit smaller longer, but man, some of these bees down here just explode. And what happens is they explode whether you want them to or not, and then they can burn through the food supplies literally almost overnight. Like within a week, they'll go from having plenty of weight to nothing because there's not a lot coming in. Something snaps them on, and then they just go. And so you've got to really watch that. Right now, we're somewhat in a holding pattern, but come the first of the year, January 1, mid-January, you got to be watching them close. And so that's kind of I think equipment-wise, I'm doing pretty well. I do want to just really work on this YouTube thing too, the outreach we're doing with the stream team. Some of the different things I'm trying on the channel with some of the stream team nuggets, and maybe trying some different, like the shorts and different methods of sharing content. And I want to be more, once again, intentional with some of the things I'm doing on YouTube. So it's kind of a total package for me. I did want to, speaking of that, and I hope I'm not making a shift here on topic a little bit, but I am going to try and do a stream team nugget. Actually, I was watching that video, our last week's video today, and I may be on that Hive Alive segment we did where you guys were talking about Hive Alive quite a bit. I mean, you guys were talking about how you're going to use it. I may do a nugget on that. And you mentioned someone to go back and watch that video, but it's about probably a 10 or 15 minute clip. I may pull that out and do that. And I also wanted to share something, a little quote I thought of when you were talking earlier, Greg, about, if I can find it here, Ralph Waldo Emerson, a quote from him. you talk about how new beekeepers, and even me, sometimes I still feel this way with certain skills. I think we all probably do. How it just seems like the tasks are too hard. You just want to kind of give up. But Ralph Waldo Emerson said the following: "That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do, not that the nature of the thing has changed, but that our power to do so has increased." And that's what happens when you get into these bees, when you work with any skill or task, whatever it is, bees or not. You got to persist at it. You got to keep working at it, and the task isn't easier, but your power to do so increases, and you become more. Your abilities improve, and that's really what this is all about. It is a skill. You mentioned it with Bob. It's an art. And the great artists of the world didn't just do that. They didn't sit down and all of a sudden they were great artists. They had to work at it and figure it out, and became, you have to learn how to read the bees and learn how to do all this stuff. And it just takes experience, and the skill will increase, and your ability to accomplish things will increase. I couldn't even have thought about managing 100 colonies even probably 5 or 6 years ago, even though I wanted to. But now I'm kind of getting there. I'm still not really where I want to be yet. And so, but I kind of went on a little segue right there. I kind of went off topic a little bit, but that's I'm just trying to make sure I've got my equipment in order. I am not a super organized person. I do a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm running out of something, let me order a bunch of this. So I don't always have everything lined up. That's a skill I need to get better at, is actually planning ahead and being prepared. But I think I'll be okay. I am a little worried about my honey supers. The last year when we took them off the bees, what I typically do is leave them out, let the bees clean them up, and then store them with paramoth type crystals. I use the ice crystals. It's the same thing. But it was raining quite a bit that week, and I had to get them out of the rain. So I stored them. They're kind of wet. I'm afraid they're a little bit moldy. I know the bees can clean some of that up, but I hope they're not too moldy. I'm a little worried about some of those frames. And so I hope I've got a lot of, good enough comb to put back on those hives in the spring. So I'm going to probably start unstacking and looking at some of that and making sure, but just kind of getting ready, making sure, because it happens to me so fast. It's like I'm not ready, and all of a sudden, boom, go grab boxes and start slapping them on there. So that's what happens to me every year, it seems.
It seems like every year I try to get to the point to where if winter is looking at you straight in the face and saying, "Are you ready?" Eventually I want to get to the point to where I say, "Yeah," and bring it on. But it seems like with everything going on all the time, year after year, just to go back to that quote that you just mentioned too, you get those revolutions, those repetitions of pushing yourself every single year, doing the things that you didn't think was possible. And the more you do that, the more you realize there is so much that you can do, that I think you're not giving yourself the credit or the ability to do because of whatever mindset that you're kind of stuck in. But being mindful of how you've done things in the past, what results those got, as simple as that sounds, is a big deal on trying to make a positive change in your habits or your approach or your methods. One of the things this year that I just am absolutely struggling with is when you grow to a certain point, there are certain configurations that I absolutely love. There are some configurations that I don't necessarily love, but are necessary. And there are some configurations that are necessary. I love them, but they don't scale up. And so we're trying to make a lot of decisions on what do we do with hive equipment? What do we do with making sure that they stay mobile? Which ones need to stay mobile? Which ones don't? And so, right now, one of the big things to think about is how many more colonies go on pallets? How many more of those pallets go to different out yards? How many hives stay just for nukes and queens? Do those go on the ground? Do those go on hive stands? Do those go on a two-way pallet or a triple two-way kind of a situation? There's all these little things that you can absolutely run yourself crazy trying to figure out. And until you just start to try some of this, you don't really know. For instance, there's no better way, in my opinion, I should preface that, there is no better way to move bees than to run four-way pallets. You can pick them with a tractor or a skid steer, put them on the truck, take them out to the next yard, move them, set them, you're good. But another little tidbit that I learned from Bob as well is that Bob he'll tell, if you ask him the question, which do better, colonies on four-ways or colonies on their own bottom boards, and he'll say colonies on bottom boards. Every year I see the same thing. When I'm running four-ways, there's always that one every pallet or so that might just be weird or goofy or off, or they got robbed out or something just weird. You spend a lot of time balancing back, keeping the four-ways full. But then, they're mobile. I can move them around, and it just and no notice can move them. You get into hives that are on bottom boards. Maybe you find a way to put them on a pallet. Maybe you put them on some landscape fabric. Maybe you put them directly on the ground. But for a lot of us ogreish type folks, the ground's a far way down, and it's a long distance to be bending over constantly to work a nuke box or to work a mating box for queens. And so putting them up on hive stands was one way this year that, although, I mean, that's so many hive stands to have to build, it's way easier to get in and work those boxes, work those queens when I can just go hive, 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 rather than up and down, up and down, up and down. So there's all these little things that we have to figure out that works for us, but also not being afraid to change or try something different, even if it means getting outside of your comfort zone. And so I'm trying to be more mindful of don't fall into habits of methods because you're comfortable there, because you might find that there is something else that you are either too afraid to try or too stubborn to try that really can be a game changer for you and your actual operation. So that's one thing that we're trying to be really mindful of coming through the spring. Right now, we are just absolutely just cruising on getting equipment, getting everything, kind of ready. One of the really big, exciting news, we'll talk about it more later because I could I need to appropriately spend a long time kind of unpacking this and going through it. But I want to thank all of the Learning Yard folks this year for all your support. If you're not aware of what the Learning Yard is, the Learning Yard is just a practical beekeeping, hands-on learning opportunity right here at our farm that's free for folks that have bought a package or a nuke from us. It's just a way that they have supported our family and our farm by buying their bees with us. So we then, in turn, want to support those folks by giving them practical beekeeping, hands-on education. We meet inside the shop. We'll talk about what's going on currently, and then we take that information right out to the Learning Yard and apply it hands-on. I didn't know what to think about that. I wasn't sure if folks were going to find that to be helpful or beneficial, but it grew so quick that we outgrew the space that we had built for it immediately. And so one of the things that we're doing right now actually is we're prepping the next pole barn, the next 50 by 60 for concrete. And we're turning that entire building into a store and a classroom and a place where folks can come learn hands-on and get to see all these little nuances within beekeeping right here for themselves. There's no judgments. There's no politics. There's no BS when it comes to beekeeping. This is just how we're raising our bees. And if you think that is something that's for you, check out our website, nature'simagefarm.com. There's a Learning Yard tab. You can learn more about how you can get involved here at Nature's Image Farm with our bees and the learning opportunity. That is where so much of our time is going right now, is these things happen, and there's no place to put that, no neat and tidy place to say, oh, okay, I guess let's go ahead and just finish a 3,000 square foot building for bee education in a store. Like was not on the list of things to do to get ready for the spring for the bees. And so trying to make the important things priorities is kind of what we're focused on right now. One of the big things that we're doing is making the quality of our equipment a priority. There's a lot of places to get very cost-effective and budget-style equipment. There's very few places to get really high-quality, long-lasting equipment, and so we are really excited this year. We've been dealers with Premier Bee Products now for several years, and we're really excited to be an Ohio dealer of their brand new line of woodenware, the PURA hive bodies, the PURA frame, and the PURA cell foundation. Like I mentioned earlier, I just got back from a trip to South Dakota visiting the factory, and seeing all these products. It's awesome. So we're looking forward to providing the entire PURA line right here, ready for pickup, right here in Ohio for folks. And really excited about growing out the store, but more importantly, I'm so excited about being able to provide even more learning opportunities for our local beekeeping community. And I don't know that Susie's watching this, but there's a lot more involvement that her and some other folks are going to get involved with doing, being able to help share and show folks how to do some of the basic things like gardening, canning, some of the basic old time ways of homesteading. It all fits together. And so we're looking forward to incorporating all of that here at Nature's Image Farm this year. So just wanted to thanks everybody for all the help at the Learning Yard for making that successful. Not only is it successful because there's folks here learning, financially it's rewarding for our family because it justifies us putting the time and putting our finances on the line to do it. And that's a big deal. That support means everything to us. And I just want to thank you guys for doing that. I think that's kind of where we are, guys. I think what I'd like to do as we kind of go throughout this winter season is start to dig in on some specific topics that has helped us get through the year, but some specific topics of what we're going to do to make sure that 2023 is the best year ever, not just for the three of us here, but everyone who's watching or a part of this community. Help support each other to make sure that we are all doing the best that we can for our bees and being responsible with the absolute blessing and gift of being on this earth and called to be beekeepers. I think that's one of the greatest things that we could ever do. That being said, do you guys have anything else you guys would like to add before we cut loose tonight and I go ice this jaw that I can't move because of this snake tooth?
Brian?
Bruce?
Of course, we could go on and on, but we're going to have more of these and going to continue doing them. And we appreciate everyone for being in the comments here and for checking in tonight. This one we're going to cut off a little bit shorter tonight. We really appreciate you guys. And I would like to just little shameless plug here. I am trying to do these Stream Team Nuggets. I would like to ask if you have seen any of the videos, these Stream Team videos, for sure on my channel. Obviously I can't go into Brian and Greg's and cut them out of there, but anything on my channel that we've done, if you would like to see, if you remember something, a segment or a clip that you really liked that you think would be beneficial to everyone, to help me pull it out, I'll be glad to pull some of those out. I really like the idea of that. That was fun doing. I've done the 3 from Ian. I've got one coming up that'll drop on Friday. I'm probably going to do the one we just talked about next from last week. And I've got some ones on mind I want to do. Just little nuggets of information. There were some, I think, tonight in this video that would have been good. And so what the idea behind it is that if you can, it's hard, I think, for someone, if you watch the live stream, you might want to go back and watch it again if you missed some things or, you wanted to see them again. But for folks that haven't seen the streams, especially maybe a month or something later or after the fact, you see a 2.5 hour video, there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to click on that. But if I can take 10, 15, 20 minutes out of that, really good concept, maybe some folks will click on it and be able to get some of the benefit of some of the wisdom that's been shared from our guests and from you guys on some of these streams. And so that's why I'm doing that. And I don't know. I know Greg's done a couple of them. I'm not sure. I don't know if he called them that or not, but Greg's done a couple. Brian, I'm not sure if you have any plans on it, but I'm going to try and do it from the ones that were on my channel. And I think, it's kind of a concept I'm trying to do. So I'm kind of pushing that a little bit here, but I just, once again, really, this is something that started, and we'll probably talk more about this as we go along, but maybe on the anniversary stream team that night, we'll talk a little more about this, just kind of how this thing came together. It's been a great year so far, and I look forward to the future. And the more I get into these, talking to you guys, the more amped up I get to want to grow. And then I have to go to work every day. I'm like, well, how am I going to do it? But I'm always thinking of how I can grow and do better. And it's just so much fun. And my mind just never stops thinking about this stuff. But I just appreciate you guys. And I appreciate everyone on here. And I can't imagine what Hive life is going to be like this year. Can you guys even imagine what that's going to be like? Just all the people.
Absolutely crazy, won't it?
Like, we've got people, I know people from my local bee club that have never heard of of us or ever heard of, Hive Life, and some of them are going to Hive Life. Now, just people that, it's just, I think that's probably happening throughout the country and throughout the world. And so it'll be a lot of fun. And so anyway, but that's just kind of where I'm at with what I'm trying to do, and just appreciate you guys and be willing to put this thing together, and all the people that participate in these videos, both in the comments and actually have come on. We just appreciate all you guys.
Brian?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say after all that. Hive Life is going to be nuts. I'll just, I'll say that. But I do just want to throw out some. Everybody's talking here about nuggets, 20-piece nuggets and different nuggets. I'm going to throw out some nuggets for our December 21st. We did mention that we're going to have one of the INSTANTVAPs is one of the prizes. So boom, right out of the gate, somebody is getting, a top-notch vaporizer. Rob, I saw, I think it was on Facebook, posted an article. There was a gentleman that has, I forget the number of colonies. It was it like 3,000, or I forget what the number was.
Yeah,
but
I saw that. Yeah, wow.
This guy used an InstaVape and was so impressed with it, he bought, what was it, two more. So he plans on running 3 of them, and he plans on having, what is it, after a month,
like
he'll have
10,000 or treatments with the 3 vapor, something. I can look it up real quick.
We're going to have one of those for one of our watchers. It just, can't say enough about that in itself.
Yeah, he said he bought one. He bought one in September and has run it through about 3,000 rounds and bought 2 more. He plans to have 20,000 treatments across the 3 units in the coming month or so.
Wow.
So if those things can do that, mine, I've been impressed, but I've done like 65 or 70 treatments. But if they can do, 20,000 treatments with 3 of them, that's a pretty incredible machine.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll be hearing more about that.
Yeah. But we have quite the lineup. I'm not going to say any names of who's going to be on, but there's quite the lineup of people already.
Charles Barkley, Larry Bird.
Barkley, yep, Larry Bird, Shaq's going to be on there. But there's going to be quite a list of people, and a lot of people that have been on the show, jumping on and just, enjoying that 1-year celebration. So it's going to be just everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah. Keep your ear out. I'm sure we'll be releasing more information about what's going to take place that night. I will say, I'm kind of leaning towards be on the stream to win something.
Yep.
So,
got to be on the stream.
Yeah. It's just, we want to give back, like Bruce has said, we appreciate, everybody, that gives the super chats, and just throughout the whole entire year that has spent time, on Wednesday nights to watch, 3 ogres talk about bees. You see there?
I see what you did there.
But, and this is just little ways that we can say thank you for everybody. So December 21st, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time. It's just going to be an awesome time. So that's all I'm going to say. So, and one other last thing. A couple people I know, I think Hale Hives was one that was saying about the 3D hives, 3D printed hives.
Oh, yeah. You're getting busy making those for Hive Life, aren't you? I'm
going to bring at least 100 of them.
Wow.
So I'll have a couple, but I'm going to work up. If anybody, I'm not going to put any on my Etsy for right now. I'm not, just because I want to get up that stock printed for the conference. But then I'm going to work out a little bit of a deal also. I'm going to knock off some, some of the price. But then also what I'm going to do, a couple people have seen that I toss in here and there, like those little bees that go along with it. I'm going to have those with every single one of those at the conference as well. So if you want a nice little educational tool or a great example, and I'll reference, Bob and Lee that do their show on Tuesdays. Both of those guys have shelves with the Hive set up on. When that thing is set up on a shelf, and then you have those little bees on it too, it's just such a cool little.
It's neat.
It's an educational piece that, Matt and Sarah has one. I think he said his nephew still to this day plays with that thing all the time. So, but I'm going to work up a deal on those things and also have the little bees with them. So it'll just be an added bonus. You're going to get them at a better price, and you'll have even more. So that's what I'm.
And they're built and they're made by Brian. Brian's been as far as I know, you were one of the very first ones to make those, and you do such an amazing job with them. It's like the little mini 3D hives. That is a Brian Coper thing, and so
he's the OG. He's the
OG on that. And so I'm going to look forward to. I know a lot of folks are going to probably want you to sign theirs if they pick them up at Hive Life. But I love yours. I pick it up. Yeah, everything comes apart, goes back together. It's also a fun learning tool that you can meet anybody where they're at and say, hey, here's what a box, here's the frames, here's the thing. And so I think that's
look at that.
That is really cool. I want to thank Lisa, Grammy Midwife there for the super chat there as well. And then also, since we've been talking, we've had a couple orders come through. I want to thank Dimitri Moore and Greg Russell for your Queen orders. I really do appreciate that. I'm glad you got those and got them secured. You got the June date still, so that's awesome. Hive Life is going to be, I'm almost afraid to even comment because I would have never expected last year going from Hive Life 1 or 1.0 to 2.0, like that was I couldn't even begin to imagine how crazy it got from 1 to 2, let alone 2 to 3. It's going to be an amazing opportunity for folks to kind of get together, to fellowship and all that. It's going to be fun that we've got the entire stream team crew that's been along the entire time too. That's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely keep your eyes out for the stream team 1 year anniversary. There's going to be a lot of great prizes, like Brian mentioned, including an instant vape from the Robbies. If you're in Ohio and you want to pick one up locally, we do now have both the DeWalt models and the Milwaukee models in stock here in Ohio at Nature's Image Farm. And so they are just so handy. They really make it fast. There's almost no excuse now not to get in there and do that. As we, a lot of times when folks are tuning out and turning off when it comes to beekeeping this time of year. But as we approach that solstice, I just want to encourage folks to be mindful of that and take the opportunity to get in there. If oxalic acid is something that you use, consider it right about that time of year to get to that point of near broodlessness as they start to ramp up. That's something that we learned from Bob Benny. And the quick story on that is he had some bees set aside for a mite study. And then that year did oxalic acid around solstice. And then come spring, there wasn't enough mites in the colonies to do the study with. And so how cool is that? So we've been doing that as well. And I'm really looking forward to the bees just doing what they do. We are going to have a lot of Hive Life specials. But one thing, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We might publicize some of those deals, but we're going to have some very special deals on nukes and queens and packages at Hive Life just for the Hive Life crowd, and all that pricing and availability will be available at Hive Life. It's just a little way that we can reward the folks for kind of being there, showing up, and supporting the whole entire movement. But then if you can't make Hive Life, we're also going to have some things coming up too to have some fun pricing on a lot of things that we have going on there too. I can't think of anything else, guys. I wanted to thank everybody for all the super chats and your contributions there too. It means the world to us that you guys are spending your time. Maybe you're supposed to be at work and you're hiding off in the janitor's closet watching the stream team. I see you. Thank you. Maybe you're at home, you're laying in bed, getting ready to crash out, listening to beekeepers just ramble on at bee. Like, we see you. Thank you. We really appreciate everyone's support. I can't say that enough, and I hope we don't sound like a broken record, but there's just no way to fully express how much we appreciate not only everyone for being here tonight, but everyone who's been here for the entire year, growing as a community. When these names are coming up on the comments, you start to feel like you actually know the people, and I think that that's really cool. So definitely looking forward to that. If you are in the Ohio area, this last Saturday is kind of the last get together. It won't be a full-on learning yard. It's going to be 19 degrees in a non-heated building. But if you want to stop out and pick up some Hive Alive, some feeding shims, or maybe you're interested in going ahead and joining the club and getting an INSTANTVAP for yourself, we'll be around from 1 to 3 here in Zanesville, Ohio. If you want more information on where to find us, or you want to come out, shoot us an email at naturesimagefarm@gmail.com. And I think that's about it, guys. Any last words?
It's been fun.
It's been real.
I guess next week it'll be on Brian's channel.
It'll be on Brian's channel next next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Brian, Bruce, I want to thank you guys too. This whole thing got started off as a mic check and a video check, helping Bruce out and seeing what was what, and then one thing led to another, and here we are as the stream team. I really appreciate you guys. Again, thank you everyone in the comments for all your support. As always, I want to remind you guys to be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.